All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the first Switchboard employment webinar. Before we get started, could somebody just type into the chat box and confirm that you can see and hear me okay? Okay, good. Looks like we have audio and visual. All right, so let's get started. Thanks so much for joining us today for Job Counseling for Career Pathways. When Switchboard did our National Needs Assessment Survey last fall, one of the key areas that respondents were looking for support in was launching or strengthening employment services beyond that first job. So this has different names. Some people call it career pathways, some people call it career advancement. But the idea is helping clients move beyond that first job that attains basic self-sufficiency and helps them onto a career pathway that will be both financially sustainable and personally fulfilling. So there's a lot that goes into that. And of course, we won't be able to talk about all of it today, but I'm really excited to get this conversation started, and particularly to think through ways that we can tweak our programming, kind of the low-hanging fruit, and things that you can do regardless of the size of your program or the funding. My name is Daniel Wilkinson. I'm a program manager for economic empowerment at Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, and we are excited to be partnering with the IRC on the Switchboard Technical Assistance Program. I have with me Meg Gibbon. She's the Program Officer for Learning and Knowledge Management at the IRC, and also working on the Switchboard team. And Meg's going to help me a little bit later on during the question and answer section. I'm also excited to have a couple expert practitioners with us. Huda Mohammed is here and will be part of our Q&A panel. She just joined the LRS staff as the Program Manager for Economic Empowerment, and she'll be working on our Career Pathways, Refugee Youth Career Pathways program, as well as a upskilling grant that we have through the Walmart Foundation. Also, we have with us Kelsey Smith. She's the Forward Program Manager, which is a career pathways program, a new career pathways program, supporting both college and career pathways at New American Pathways in Atlanta, Georgia. And lastly, we have Michael Murphy. He's the Program Manager for Refugee Resettlement at Catholic Social Services of the Miami Valley in Dayton, Ohio. So I'm excited to have all three of these expert practitioners with us for our Q&A time. One thing that I find really important, even though I have some direct service experience myself in the past as a job developer, being in a technical assistance role where I'm not working day in, day out with refugees, it's really important to me that I have people on the line who can speak to what's going on right now. All right, so first, just a few tech tips. You can call in by phone. Hopefully you figured this out by now, but if you have a poor audio connection, you can call in with your phone. So if things aren't sounding right to you on your computer, go to audio, I believe, on your control panel, and you should be able to find instructions for that. Secondly, throughout the presentation, any questions that you have, you don't need to wait till the question and answer section. You can just type in your questions as we go, and Meg will be tracking that. Usually the first question that is asked in any presentation is, will these slides and this recording be shared? So I'll just go ahead and answer that for you now. The answer is yes, and we will be providing those things via email and also on Switchboard's website. Finally, before we get started, if you're attending as a group, I know sometimes there might be a group of you sitting in a boardroom watching this. We'd really appreciate it if you would let us know who else is with you. We want to track who's attending and be able to provide follow-up resources for everybody that's in your group. So if you could either email Meg or I put our email addresses in the initial chat message that you should have seen when you logged in, or if you just want to send a message to Meg in the chat and let her know who's with you, that would be great. All right, so, oops, sorry about that. Wanted to just real quickly introduce Switchboard. I know probably most of you are familiar with us by now, but we are a new program. And so Switchboard is funded by the Office for Refugee Resettlement, and we're a one-stop resource hub for refugee service providers in the United States. We offer tools, materials, learning opportunities, research, and technical assistance on refugee resettlement-related topics. I want to emphasize for anybody that's attending this webinar who may have been very familiar with HIRE, the former Employment Technical Assistance Program, that Switchboard provides technical assistance not just in employment, but really in a variety of areas related to refugee resettlement. Switchboard is implemented by the International Rescue Committee, as I mentioned earlier, in partnership with LIRS. So we hope that if you haven't already, you'll visit our website so that you can learn more, and that's switchboardta.org. All right, so I wanted to go over quickly the learning objectives of our webinar today. By the end of today's webinar, we hope that you'll be able to describe what a career pathway is and why career pathways are important for refugees and other clients that we serve. We hope that you'll be able to identify at least 3 things that you can do without additional funding or much funding to strengthen the career pathways possibilities for your clients. And we hope that as a result of our discussion today, both the things that I share in the presentation as well as the conversation that we have with our Q&A panelists, that you'll be able to identify some strategies and tools for managing client expectations, helping clients set career goals, and empowering clients to take ownership of their career pathway. All right, so let's get started with some of our content here. So what are career pathways and why are they so important? One thing you may not have realized, and we're going to touch on it later, is that Switchboard just released a job counseling for career pathways toolkit. So we hope that following this webinar, you'll go to our website and take a look at that toolkit, and hopefully it'll be a great resource for you. If you do some research on career pathways, you'll find that there's different definitions. It's a topic that's talked about in workforce development broadly, but the definition that we went with here in our toolkit that we just released is the process of following an identified path from entry-level jobs to more advanced positions within a chosen industry or field. So as far as why career pathways are so important for refugees, I would say that the key word in the definition here is chosen. Career pathways are important for our clients because it means that they can move beyond survival jobs that they have to do just to make it, to careers that they want to do. When we can help our clients access work that's fulfilling, it has the potential to make a significant impact on their personal happiness, financial health, and the overall integration in their community. So as we shift towards a greater emphasis on career advancement or career pathway services, which is a shift that a lot of programs around the country are making right now in light of lower arrival numbers, I want to share a few fundamentals that I believe are accessible enough that any program, regardless of size, can implement. We'll call these fundamentals 3 elements of a successful refugee career pathways strategy. So the first element is that a successful career pathways strategy emphasizes long-term personal fulfillment over short-term financial self-sufficiency. So it's moving beyond that kind of first job, any job approach. It's about setting a goal and mapping a path to that goal. Of course, we'll continue to support the financial responsibility and health of our clients, but in most cases, the client should already be financially stable, at least at a basic level. So through Career Pathways Services, we get the fun job of supporting our clients in moving beyond surviving to thriving. And I know that's kind of a cliche statement, but it's a good way to put it. We want our clients to thrive, not just to make it, but to really have fulfilling work that's financially sustainable, and is really allowing them to build their own version of the American dream, whatever that is. Secondly, a successful refugee career pathways strategy provides individualized career counseling designed to empower clients to take ownership of their own professional journey. So we're not talking about new arrivals anymore, and they're clients who are ready to take ownership and really start to do more things for themselves. And so this second one might not sound that different than, probably a lot of you try to do this with early employment programs as well, and that's great. We should be taking a strengths-based approach to all of our job counseling. But just practically, newer arrivals are just going to need more support. They're going to need more hand-holding. They're not going to necessarily be over that initial cultural adjustment hump. So there's a lot of things that you're going to have to do for and with them. When you move to career pathways programming, you really want to be encouraging your clients to do as much as they can do on their own. The third element is that a successful refugee career pathways strategy equips clients to overcome barriers to professional advancement. So, of course, all career pathway services are about overcoming barriers, whether it's early employment or career advancement. But again, this is where you really want to focus on what are kind of the next step barriers that are getting in the way of your clients advancing. Maybe they have gotten that first job and are doing pretty well, but do they need more help on interviewing skills, or is it a particular industry that might have a lot of red tape that they're trying to get into that has licensure requirements, maybe credential evaluation is necessary, and so there's going to be some barriers that are some barriers will be the same, like English, sometimes transportation, but other barriers will be unique to somebody who's been here for a longer period of time. One thing that we want to emphasize in Switchboard is that we want to do our best to, when we provide training and technical assistance, to provide evidence-based technical assistance. And so in looking for evidence on career pathways with refugees, obviously there's not a whole lot of information out there that's refugee specific. There is a lot of work being done currently on career pathways in general. And when I send out the follow-up email, I'll include a couple additional links that you might want to check out where you can read some of that broader information. But I wanted to highlight this report that just came out in December of 2018 that the IRC released called Skill, Career, and Wage Mobility Among Refugees. I'm not going to read the really long subtitle there, but I wanted to share just a few of their conclusions since they did do some work and some research on career pathways, specifically as it relates to refugees. And I want to give credit to Erica Boris, who is one of their technical advisors for economic empowerment, who did a lot of this research in this report. So the key themes here, they found that in looking at refugee career programming around the country in the IRC network, They found 5 things. First of all, refugees looking to upskill are working adults, and as such, they have specific needs. So most program clients that you'll serve in a career pathways program are already working. And so it's a challenge to juggle work and trying to advance in your career, especially if you're trying to do an upskilling program, vocational training program. That can be a real challenge. And it's not just juggling work and training, but also more complicated challenges such as dependent care arrangements, child care, the absence of a car or need to share a car, frequent night shifts, and last-minute schedule changes. So there's a lot of these things that I know I don't necessarily need to tell you about because you deal with these things every day. But there are specific needs that clients looking to upskill have. The second thing that they found in this report was that skills training matters. This might seem kind of obvious, but other research in the past, in addition to this report, has found that what you call Made in America certifications, be it as simple as a GED or vocational training certifications, that those things really do make a difference. And the IRC career program data showed that the majority of refugee participants that are embracing skills training move into higher skilled, higher wage jobs. Third thing was that skills training is not enough. While it's really helpful, it's not necessarily going to do the trick on its own. The client interviews that IRC did revealed that clients themselves articulate other needs that they have, not being sure how to even begin figuring out what a good job might be in their community, needing support registering for classes and navigating the upskilling or just career advancement process, and needing assistance with direct job placement and other things. And so that navigation piece is really, really important in helping clients move forward. The next thing was that refugee career programming intersects with middle skilled jobs in particular. Middle skilled jobs, most clients focus on middle skilled jobs because the demographics of refugee arrivals in terms of educational attainment and skill level. In recent years, most adult refugee arrivals have a secondary education or less. And so there's obviously going to be a concentration on middle skilled jobs. Additionally, for any of you who've partnered with the mainstream workforce development system, there's a lot of focus right now on those middle skilled jobs and creating pathways into them, be it through apprenticeships, on-the-job training, or other things. So I encourage you to take a look at this report from the IRC and learn more about the evidence that's there for career pathways programming. All right, so now I want to hear a little bit from you guys. We're going to do a poll. I want to kind of find out who's in the room and how you would describe your current efforts when it comes to your career pathways services. So I'm going to launch this poll here. And you should be seeing 4 choices. Would you consider your current efforts with career pathway services to be well-developed career pathway services, so 3 years or more? New career pathway services, less than 3 years? Are you in the process of designing career pathway services? Or are you hoping to provide career pathway services in the future? So if you could choose one of those choices and submit, we'll see where we're at. I'll give you a minute to do that. All right, So far, it looks like the majority of folks are in the second group, New Career Pathways Services. I'm going to give you just a second for any last votes to come in. All right, I'm going to close this poll. And let's share this. Okay, so as you can see, the top choice was New Career Pathways Services. So the majority of you have started moving in this direction, started making the shift from a focus on early employment programs to providing support beyond those initial early employment services. So that's not surprising to me. The second one is, let's see, 28% in the process of designing career pathways services. And so that means that over 50% of you either already have started this or are in the process of starting these kinds of services. A smaller percentage of you are already doing this, about 16% are providing career pathways services. And then about 18% of you hope to provide career pathways services in the future. All right, so we're going to go back to our presentation now. Thanks for providing that feedback. That's helpful, not just for us to know who's in the room and what your focus might be, but also as we move forward in providing resources. It's just really good to know kind of where the network as a whole is at. So now I'm going to shift, before we get to our Q&A time, I wanted to share a few things that I think that you can do now to shift towards career pathways. And again, my focus for this webinar was really, I wanted career pathways to be accessible. I'm hearing everybody, almost everybody around the country saying that they're shifting to more integration services broadly, and then in terms of employment, making a shift to providing that longer term employment support. But I think sometimes if you're short on resources, which some organizations are right now, short on staff, they've maybe had to downsize. It can be a little frustrating when you want to expand your services, but you're under-resourced. So let's look at 3 things that you can do now. The first thing that I think that we can do is see intakes as a collaborative conversation. Because intakes often involve paperwork and relate to program compliance, it's easy to take a check-the-box approach or view them simply as formalities. Regardless of whether or not you currently offer career pathway services, I think that it would be worth taking some time in your next staff meeting maybe to consider what simple tweaks you can make to your intakes to make them more collaborative and strengths-based. How can you use them as an opportunity not just to gather information, but to affirm the strengths of your clients and involve them in setting a strategy for the next steps in their career? This is especially critical for career pathways programs, as you want to make sure that you are empowering your clients to take ownership of their career pathways as much as possible. So again, and I'm sure many of you are already doing this and thinking this way, I also understand that intakes and paperwork relate to compliance, and so there's things that you have to do, and so I'm not suggesting even that you change that, but just suggesting that hit the pause button and take some time in a staff meeting to say, how can we make intakes more of a conversation rather than a formality? And that's one simple thing that you can do, even if you're a 1 or 2 person team. The second thing I want to talk about is reimagining job readiness. So the focus here is to shift from job readiness activities designed for new refugee arrivals to activities customized for clients who have been here for some time. As we mentioned earlier, those who are over that initial culture shock, who already have a first or maybe even a second job and are ready to pursue the next step in their careers. Job readiness or job club or whatever you want to call it for these clients should focus on identifying the barriers that are holding them back from advancing in their careers. Is it English? Is it lack of credentials? Is it difficulty developing a professional network? Look at your specific cohort of clients that you want to serve and try to figure out what are the most common barriers holding them back. So not, in the final year of hire, we did develop a job readiness curriculum, but what I'm talking about here is not using an out-of-the-box curriculum necessarily, but actually, really doing the work to kind of build your own, not just job readiness instruction, but job readiness experiences. And so it might be going out and doing networking events. It might be doing mock interviews with corporate volunteers. What are the things that will help them really get over those humps that maybe aren't even all that hard for them to get over, but they just need a little bit of support in focusing on those things so that they can get to the next level. Finally, before I move on, I just want to mention, don't forget to incorporate adult learning principles into your instruction. Do as much hands-on and experiential learning as possible, and set the expectation that your clients will do as much as they can for themselves. I think at this stage, our job is to give them the tools and information that they need, but they really need to move the ball forward in terms of taking ownership of their own career pathway. The third and final shift, and I think this one is particularly important, is shifting from developing jobs to developing pathways. So you're not just looking for job openings anymore. You're actually looking for career pathways. Excuse me. So yeah, a lot of us, let me back up. A lot of us, especially those of us who've been job developers, are always just looking for job openings, and we're looking for what's available. And we're not always so much looking for specific pathways and for diversifying our employer pool in a very intentional way. And so, shifting from developing jobs to developing pathways is simply the shift to, it might not only be an employer, it might also look like developing relationships with other organizations like career centers or local government or community colleges. So some education programs might be organizations that you need to develop relationships with so that you can develop those pathways. Also setting the expectation of advancement with employers. Every time you talk to an employer, asking about what are ways that people typically advance in this company, and just setting the expectation that your clients are valuable employees who are not just interested in entry-level work, but are interested in growing with that company. And one thing I want to mention before we move on is just that I realize, I talked about low-hanging fruit and things everybody can do, and I realize that this shift in terms of needing to develop more relationships might seem the most daunting if you're a small team with limited resources. But just keep in mind that being intentional about cultivating career pathways, possibilities, and partnerships in your community will eventually add capacity to what you have to offer your clients. So even if all you can dedicate is a couple hours a week, over the course of a year, that could make a big difference. If you're understanding of the opportunities that exist in your communities and the referral partnerships that you have at your disposal, if you can increase those things, even if all you can give it is a couple hours a week, I really think that being intentional about that is something that everybody can do and can make a big difference for you and for your clients. So we're going to move into this next section of strategies and tools for overcoming challenges and taking things to the next level. And what we're going to do here is really have more of a discussion rather than me giving you more slides and bullet points. And so we're going to do another poll real quick, and we're going to use this your answers to let us know what our top priorities are in terms of having a conversation with our expert field practitioners and seeing what you all would like us to talk about today. So I'm going to launch the second poll. And so on this question, it's what would you say your most significant challenge is outside of funding to supporting the career advancement of your clients? Is it managing unrealistic client expectations, client skills, logistics barriers, things like English, transportation, childcare, et cetera? Is it your learning curve, strengthening your ability to do job development across industries and skill levels, diversifying your employer pool? Is it difficulty developing referral partnerships in your community? Sometimes the possibilities are there, the training programs are there, but actually working with them is quite difficult. And so is that it? Finally, is it just simply not enough time or staff capacity? And I know that that's related to funding, but if that's how you feel, go ahead and pick that one. So I'm going to give you about 20 seconds or so to put in your vote. All right, I'm getting ready to close this off. So if you haven't voted, please vote very quickly. All right, and let's share these results. All right, so the winner is barriers, not surprisingly. Client skills, logistics barriers, these things always come up. The English, the transportation, the childcare, computer literacy, trauma, all of these things are major barriers at the beginning of a refugee's experience in the U.S., and they continue to be barriers as we try to help them take the next steps in their career. The other ones were a little closer. We got 3 in the teens, and so not enough time. Oh, you know what? Did I share this? I don't know that I. Let's see here.
Hi,
Okay,
Daniel.
yeah.
Meg here. We can see you.
Okay, good. Thanks. All right. So 18% said not enough time or staff capacity. 13% managing unrealistic client expectations. 14% diversifying employer partnerships. And lastly, difficulty developing referral partnerships in the community. Okay, so that's actually encouraging as far as the referral partnerships. Sounds like that's, I know in the past that's sometimes been a very difficult thing. And so hopefully that means that you all have very strong partnerships in your community. So we're gonna bring our Q&A panel on now. And so Q&A panel, if you could unmute yourselves, or if you need me to unmute you, I can do that. Kelsey and Michael, looks like you're unmuted. Kelsey, you're still muted.
I'm here now.
Okay. All right, looks like we have everybody. Great. So just to remind everybody who we have in the room, we have Huda from LIRS and formerly IRC, Kelsey from New American Pathways, and Michael from Catholic Social Services of the Miami Valley in Dayton, Ohio. All right, great. So, so going back to our poll. Why don't we start with barriers? And since we're talking about career pathways programs, can we talk specifically about the barriers that clients still face when they're looking to take that second step or that third step? What are some of the barriers that you've seen in your work with clients that have been here 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? And what are some strategies that you've seen be successful in helping them navigate that? I think since she's right next to me, I'm going to throw this first one to Huda. I know that right before coming to LIRS about a month ago, she was working, developing an advanced job readiness class and doing some career pathways work at IRC in Baltimore. And so, Huda, what would you say some of the barriers that you saw clients still facing beyond that first job? And then what was the approach that you all took at IRC Baltimore?
Sure. First, thanks, Danielle, and hello to everyone. I would mention that before, when I was with IRC, the first thing was when we were looking for example, to provide training, we were looking for the main barrier for the client. Let's say we have a group of 10 clients. We look at the top barrier for those 10 clients. And if we notice, for example, childcare barrier, we try to work around childcare. For example, if we have women that would like to access training, but because of the childcare issue, we tend to provide training at night. So the husband, when comes back after work, could take care of the children, and the women could go to the training. If transportation is the issue, also we try to kind of provide a carpool, connecting clients with each other. The one who doesn't drive, go with the one who drives. And maybe if you have funds in your program, you could provide like gas cards to the client. Or if you don't have enough funds, you could arrange for mutual agreement between clients to pay for like gas to take them to the training. So I would say, as a suggestion, you need to find first your top barrier or your top obstacle for the clients to access either job or training, and then try to make plan according to that. If it's very individual kind of barrier to the client to access training or job, try to meet with them individually and give them time to see what is their plan before you provide your own plan. Maybe sometimes the client would come to you with a suggestion, but they just need some advice, and you can step in and give them advice. If they have no clue of what they need to do, maybe at this point you will step in and provide your plan. Giving client time, I would say most of the time, don't rush the meeting with the client just to have them sign paper. Give them an hour and 30 minutes. And believe it or not, you will see the big impact you will make on client's life and how much successful your program will become. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Huda. That's really helpful. Kelsey, let's go to you next, because I was talking to you this morning, and you were telling me about some of the things that you all are doing at New American Pathways in terms of addressing folks' barriers, both through kind of like a cohort-based learning as well as through coaching and mentorship. So could you talk a little bit? You don't necessarily have to talk about all those things, but on this topic of barriers that clients in career pathways programs will continue to face.
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. So at New American Pathways, our forward program is a cohort-based model, and I would like just to echo what Huda said very accurately. When we do intake with our clients to even enroll them in the cohort model, it's usually about a 2-hour process, because a great deal of it is facilitating discussion with the clients around their goals and objectives. One of our primary questions is, what does success look like to you? When you think about your future for yourself and your family, and you think of a positive outcome, what does that mean? And getting them to think about and articulate those details so that we can have a better understanding of what the client wants to achieve, instead of necessarily formulating our own opinions on that fact. So from there, we from the intake portion, we do enroll the clients in a cohort model. So it's a small group of refugee and immigrant clients attending classes, one-to-one coaching and mentorship. As far as addressing barriers, our classes are offered both morning and evening. We do have a number of parents of small children. We have people coming from as far away as outside an hour or an hour and a half outside of the city because they really want to come to the program and they're excited about it, or people who are able to access us by public transportation. And we found that by offering a dual schedule, so every week there are two of the same class, one in the morning and one in the evening, we've been able to make the classes and resources much more accessible to the clients. The same with the coaching. We do one-to-one coaching sessions for a month-long period, but we offer those either in person, on phone, or via Skype for those clients who aren't able to get away with perhaps childcare or transportation or work scheduling issues. And we found that offering these sorts of options doesn't really increase much burden on us necessarily. It's not something we have to provide extra funding or resources for, but it really does go a long way in helping the clients being able to access the services and feeling like it matters to us that they are able to access these things.
Great. Thank you, Kelsey. Michael, I know that you're working in Dayton specifically with a lot of Congolese refugees, and we've talked about how sometimes that can mean approaching career advancement or career pathways a little bit differently than the way that a lot of people may think about it with other populations. Do you want to talk about some of the barriers that you all are helping them overcome in Dayton, Ohio?
Yeah, can you go back to the slide that shows the breakdown of the poll?
Sure.
I kind of want to use. Okay, so yeah, so right now, so Dayton is like 96% Congolese. That's the population we've been working with over the past couple years. But the African diaspora has been a large piece for us. So when we talk about refugees for Dayton, it really is kind of looking at the specific ethnic groups, and I'm assuming that this is probably something that the majority of you are doing also, because you can have one group of refugee population coming from one part of the world, and you have to kind of tweak your programming or your process to support them than, say, another group. And so the Congolese that we've been working with have struggled with being prepared and ready for the American workforce. But if we go back and we look within that sort of space of career advancement over the last few years, we were receiving the 1972 Burundi populations in the early sort of mid-2000s. So that's a population that came through and still to this day has challenges in Dayton with employment opportunities and advancement. And that has to do with a huge assortment of reasons. But their acculturation process has been a lot slower. There have been barriers and challenges around psychosocial acculturation. There have been issues with education. We've had issues with interpersonal relationships, substance abuse, and chemical dependency. So this population is still struggling. We're seeing the same kinds of issues and challenges within the Congolese community that we're working with. So when I look at, the reason I had you pull up this slide is because when I look at this, there's a 7% interest in the difficulty developing referral partnerships in the community. We sort of look at that as two issues with client skills and logistic barriers. We kind of hit those head on both ways. We recognize that the Congolese community will have these challenges over the next couple years, right? The amount of trauma that they've experienced as a demographic and the intensity of services that they'll potentially need are going to continue long past RMP and probably most likely long past our ORR funding of up to 60 months as challenges. So what we've done and what we're trying to do is utilize the community to provide that support. So when we look at the difficulty of developing referral partnerships, we're not looking at specifically how Catholic Social Services can be sort of the end-all be-all of that support. We're trying to figure out how the community partners can be those resources and locations for that population. So in partnership with, we have a Welcoming America component here called Welcome Dayton. So in partnership with Welcome Dayton, in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, the Dayton Chamber of Commerce, and then in partnership with an organization called Miami Valley Career Technology Center. We've been working with employers, we've been working with other social services program partners to figure out how they can augment or tweak their pre-existing programming to continue to support these populations. So on top of kind of the typical RMP programming that's provided for employment intake and self-sufficiency, individual self-sufficiency plans, and kind of that whole space around economic self-sufficiency, we're also kind of trying to figure out what's the best way to make the welcoming community, Dayton, respond so that as people grow in their current positions within companies and organizations and are able to continue to grow, or if they do want to expand outside of that into another position, we're able to support them, but also referrals to those partners are able to provide those supports too. So that's kind of what we're doing and how we're trying to attempt to respond to these barriers and these needs as the sort of landscape of economic self-sufficiency changes for reception and placement and then post-RMP programming.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And just so you know, your audio sounded a little bit choppy. I'm not sure if there's anything that you can do. We could hear you, but it was just a little choppy.
Okay.
So just FYI. Meg, have we gotten any questions from the audience yet?
Hi, Daniel. Yes, we have. We've gotten a few. Speaking of barriers, maybe we can take this question from Armidi at YMCA International, who says, in our program, we help clients take courses in community college, and afterwards we try to help them get a job based on their certificate and skills. The problem is that clients have unrealistic expectations after receiving their certificates. When they have basic English, most companies are not satisfied with a certificate and need someone stronger or fluent in English. What suggestions do you have?
Any panelists want to jump on that one? Huda?
I can take that. So I would say.
Go ahead. We'll go Huda and then Michael.
I would take it back to the initial conversation with the client when you do the intake and you provide the training information to the client. You need to manage their expectation from the beginning. Most of the time when I used to work with my team to provide training to clients, we tell them the national average wage, but we tell them you maybe make less. Will you be interested? And if the clients say no, then that's fine. At least they don't go through the whole entire training and waste their time and waste our funds, honestly, and not accept jobs at the end. If they say yes, most of the time we tend to tell them even below the average wage for that specific training. So for example, let's say they go through maintenance training and the average wage is 13. We tell them you may expect accepting $11 job because this will be your first job in the U.S. If they make more, that's even better, but we tell them that just to manage their expectation. I think if you do this from the beginning, you will see great outcome.
Thanks, Huda. Michael, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, so we kind of come at it from a little bit of a different space. When we're having the conversation, if the YMCA is looking at referring people to a community college and then a certificate is provided, I go back to the conversation with the partners. Who are the expected employers and how are they engaged in that conversation? If you have somebody that's going in for a certificate for HVAC, for example, and you're getting clients to enroll in this HVAC system or this program, and let's say it's 18 months, and at the end they have their certificate. Have you had conversations with the HVAC company? Are they prepared and ready and willing to work with this population? Have you discussed the barriers around language capacity? Have you discussed the cultural competency pieces? And so it's more about not just focusing on the client, but it's also working and sort of supporting the employer so that they're prepared for that. If clients know that they're going to be referred to a community college, get a certificate, and there's a potential pipeline for an employment opportunity, that could probably be more beneficial for all parties involved, and then you don't have so much of the sort of diminished expectations. And then that way, people are able to move forward and recognize either they'll come in, sort of like as Huda's saying, at a specific level, or there needs to be tweaks within the training and the opportunities so that real expectations are being met, so that instead of maybe an 18-month, now it's a 36-month, because you have to expand and work on language skills. So that's what I recommend.
Mm-hmm. And just jumping in on that, I would say from our perspective too, oftentimes we try to help the clients understand their own responsibility in that as well, and that it won't be just an English class that's going to get their language skills to where they need it to be, and understanding the perspective of the employer. The employer needs someone who communicates well with their customers, with their colleagues, with their clients, and that it is the responsibility of our clients to be working on their language skills just for mutual communication. One example we give, many of our clients speak very well, but their writing skills across the board are very poor. And so we give them the example of, nowadays people are taught to recognize scam emails by their poor spelling and grammar. You don't want your emails to be automatically deleted because people think you're a scam. And it kind of puts it in a realistic perspective for them, sort of like a little bit of a shock, but then, oh, that's what's going on. That's the issue that I'm facing against. And then we connect them to the resources and the practice and say, it's only going to get better if you do something about it, and do something about it every day. And so we provide a sort of accompanying pathway of, how do I work on this skill and what steps can I take?
Right. And thanks, Kelsey, for that. I wanted to echo some of what was just said, especially by Michael earlier, regarding kind of the employer demand, making sure that we're demand driven. I think that these career pathway services is really a balance between taking people's goals, whatever they are, whether or not there's a big demand for that or not, and giving them hope and helping them find the steps to pursue that goal. But then at the same time, knowing your market, knowing what the employers in your area value, whether it's certifications or whether it's just there's a labor shortage in a certain industry. So I just put on here the recommended resources slide. The second thing there hires a guide to using labor market information for refugee employment programs. This is something that the former TA provider Hire published in their final year last year. And if you're not familiar with that, that would be one way to look at. It provides a lot of tools and insight on looking at your local market and kind of how to work smarter when it comes to job development and being demand driven. Meg, do we have any other questions?
Yes, Daniel, we actually have several questions, and I'm sure we won't be able to get to all of them. So thank you all for your great questions, and we'll do our best to follow up with those who we can't answer during today's call. Next, let's go to a question that was sort of shared across a few askers. Rayanne and Mamadou both asked a question similar to this. Again, on client expectations. So most clients who have good English skills or who are professionals in their country, such as doctors and engineers, do not want an entry-level job, and it's difficult to help them find employment in their field. What suggestions do the panelists have for these type of higher skilled clients?
I'd be happy to jump on that one, because that's the majority of who we're currently serving at New American Pathways. My clients are biochemical engineers, cardiologists, accountants, software developers, and they're really struggling with having to work in gas stations or in factories or things like this to provide income. So we have several ways of addressing this. One of the ways is to help the clients gain perspective on the situation, knowing, yes, this is hard and not what you want and not what we want for you, but that no job is ever wasted. To start looking at your transferable skills instead of how can I get out of this as soon as possible. Look at what you're learning through this job and be able to articulate that well, because your US-based experience is still going to count for something. And then we also are constantly working on expanding our own network as well as our clients to connect them to anyone in that field, whether it might be for an informational interview, and we're teaching the clients how to do that sort of thing, to sending them to events related to their field around the city, to matching them with mentors in the field to open as many doors as possible for them, so that even if it turns into an entry-level job but still in their field, they're usually much, much happier with that opportunity because it seems like a more clear pathway and a step forward. But again, for us, it really starts at look at what your current job is affording you and opportunities to showcase your soft skills that the employers are looking for. We focus a lot on that in our program to say employers are not just looking for your college degree and your technical skills, they are, but also your soft skills. Can you market yourself well? Because that's what it takes in the American labor force. So those are some of the approaches we use with those clients.
Great. So we're getting close to our wrap-up time. We're about 5 minutes away. Unfortunately, we probably won't be able to get to all the other questions, but as Meg said, we will do our best to follow up offline on some of those questions. Since we talked about job counseling today, job counseling for career pathways, that was the title, but really we kind of we went broader than that for today's discussion. But talking about the counseling piece specifically, I just wanted to ask each of our panelists if you could give just one sentence or two advice about counseling career pathways clients. What would your advice be? If each of you would just share that, just to wrap this up. Huda, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I would say maybe I'll take it back to my previous experiences as I being a refugee myself. So I always put myself in a client situation, and I try to play dual role by being the client and being the service provider. So I would encourage you always to look at clients and try to understand their needs and their interests and try to help them to achieve that. Don't make plans for them. Try to help them make their own plans. This is my advice to you all.
I would just echo what Huda said. It's really about the client, and listening is probably the primary piece of importance. We find that, especially for our clients who are refugees, maybe they haven't been asked in a really long time, what do they want to do? And what do they want their future to look like? It's been more, which out of necessity and has been, this is what you need to do. And so when they come to that space where they can freely talk about and maybe start to dream again, we find that can be pretty powerful. And we just encourage them to have that while also balancing it with, okay, this is what that could look like in this context that you find yourself in.
Thanks, Kelsey.
So
that's great.
we're kind of, it's pretty kind of the same across the board. We really do focus on strength-based approaches, and we also really try to focus on helping them not forget how much they've accomplished and how far they've come. Sometimes people can get overwhelmed and kind of anxious about what they're not getting, but helping them flip that script and really sort of focus on where they are, where their families are, where their children are, et cetera, and see all of the battles that they've won and success that they've already had. It kind of helps with that process of not getting overwhelmed or feeling defeated. So it really focusing on the positive in that strength.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to our panel. I wish that we had more time for questions, but we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. The recommended resources slide has been up for a few minutes, so hopefully you've had a chance to look over that as we've been talking. I would encourage you to visit switchboardta.org to access our brand new release today, I think, or yesterday, Job Counseling for Career Pathways Toolkit. That gets a lot deeper into the conversations, the motivations of clients, the questions. There's a couple tools, templates that you can use included in that guide. So take a look at that. I already talked about Hire's labor market information guide. You can also access that on Switchboard's website in the employment resources. Just so you know, before we log off here, the IRC report, Skill, Career, and Wage Mobility Among Refugees, is actually attached as a handout. And so if you didn't notice that on your control panel, you should be able to actually download that now. And finally, we hope that you will keep in touch with us and request technical assistance from Switchboard. We're happy to email with you, have phone conversations with you. So please let us know what kind of support you need, and we'll do our best to help support you in whatever way that we can. I'm going to skip our learning objectives, but I hope that this was a valuable time for you guys, and that you were able to get some new ideas, have a better sense of what a career pathway is, and walk away with some strategies and tools, particularly from hearing your colleagues speak in the past several minutes. And we'd like you to fill out a survey. We'll also include this in the email that we send you, the follow-up email, and so this isn't your only chance. But if you have a few minutes now, go ahead and click into the survey and give us some feedback. Let us know if this was helpful for you, what was most helpful, what we can improve, and what you would like to see in the future. And finally, here's just basically our contact information. Email, and I'm not sure why that G ended up down there, but switchboard@rescue.org is email, and then we have Twitter as well for people that like Twitter, and our website is www.switchboardta.org. And thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to more conversations in the future. Thanks, everybody.